Well, this week's interview is with Steve Christmas, Dr. Steve Christmas, as you probably don't know him. Steve, if you're part of our church, the way you probably have encountered Steve is either just sort of generally, or he will have been one of the people who would have come to you from time to time and said, will you serve communion this week? And you might have found reasons why, no, I'd rather not. Or you may have been really a joy to him by saying, yes, of course, I'd love to. Or you might have seen him playing guitar or just being around the place. And he and Kath have been part of our church for a little while. And it's a delight, Steve, to be able to have you this week. Just share a little bit of your life and who you are and what you're up to. You're not from round here originally, are you? Where are you from originally?
Right, okay, I was born in Surrey and then moved around a bit and then spent my formative years in Bournemouth before I moved up north, moved up to university and then moved up north.
Okay.
So Bournemouth really is my home.
Yeah. And what brought you to Salford?
Well, when I finished my degrees, I got a job offer in what was Hope Hospital at the time, working on arthritis. And so not knowing where Salford was even, I came up for an interview and got the job and accepted it. And I was very blessed because two different people from my home church independently said to me, oh, if you're moving up there, you must go to Eccles Evangelical Church. And I didn't even know where Eccles was, but then found out it was literally a quarter of a mile away from Hope Hospital. So that was God leading me to a church in Salford.
That was the church that later would become Elmwood, of course.
Yes, yes. Right, yeah.
So that, and so you were working in the hospital. You didn't. Yes. You slipped it in after I finished my degrees, so which suggests that you did more than an undergrad degree. So what were you studying at university?
Well, I did a biochemistry degree, and then I got towards the end of the degree, I got absolutely fascinated by immunology, which I'd spent the rest of my career on. So I then went on to do a PhD in immunology, DPhil as it was in Oxford. Okay. And then stayed in the field of immunology, but applying it to various different scientific problems and medical problems.
We'll come back to that in a moment, because I think that clearly has been your professional life and beyond my brain, but I'd like to explore that with you for a while. You came up to Eccles Evan and two people had said, that's the church you need to go to. Yes. And you became part of that church for a while and got more of a gift than you might have imagined.
Yes, that's where I met Kath. And yeah, we got married there and then stayed there until it moved to Elmwood and then stayed at Elmwood for a while and then moved on to another church after that.
How long have you been married?
38 years now.
Oh, congratulations. 2 years to go and then a big celebration.
Yes, yeah.
So you worked at Hope, as it was, for a while, and then you moved to Christie's for a while, didn't you?
Yes, so then it was working on cancer research, sort of applying immunology to cancer, yes.
Okay. If you were imagining you were speaking to an absolute buffoon, which is not far off. Can you give me a quick definition of immunology?
Right, okay, well immunology is how the body recognises foreign things. So foreign things include normally bacteria and viruses and fungi, which are the main pathogens that can attack us. So that's the normal standard role of the immune system, how it protects us from infection. But it also has side effects. It can also protect us from cancer under certain conditions because cancer is analogous to an infection in that it's different from the normal cells within your body. But it can also be applied in transplantation as well, because when you have a transplant, then essentially the immune system can see that as being different from yourself and start rejecting it and responding to it. And what we have to do is try and prevent that from happening. So with an infection, you want the immune response to switch on and work. But with a transplant, you want it to switch off and not work.
Right, okay. So what you've just sort of said in about 4 or 5 sentences, I would need a little time to think about, but it sounds fascinating. I mean, you've spent all of your career. You went from Christie's, then you moved to Liverpool, to the university.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's where I think 29 years or something you spent.
Yeah, yes.
There. So in a teaching and a research context, you
Yes.
mentioned that part of your research has been around arthritis, but what else has been your research areas particularly?
Well, when I was at Christie, I was looking at cancer and how the immune system can help to eliminate cancers. And I carried on with that at Liverpool, but I also worked on a couple of other areas, in transplantation, as I mentioned, and also pregnancy, how the immune system, because pregnancy is another situation where the immune system can be involved, because the mother can see the baby as being a foreign body, because the baby's got the father's characteristics, father's antigens, and can respond to it. So the body has to protect the baby from the normal immune response. So the mother's body undergoes various changes during pregnancy to stop her from rejecting the baby. So it's the same principles applied in different areas.
When you're involved in that sort of area of work and research, what does that actually mean? I mean, are you trialing things? Are you doing things by
I was more involved in the basic research, so a particular aspect of it, and just doing some preliminary work to see how that could be applied in the future. I wasn't really at sort of the cutting edge of new drug design or vaccine design, but it was more the basic research that would lead on to vaccine design or therapeutic methods.
I think that your area of expertise then clearly is, I mean, it's in the news every day at the moment. We hear about antigens and antibodies and vaccines and all the rest of it. So with your professional sort of hat on, how do you respond to the situation we're finding at the moment?
Right, well, I think they're generally going about it the right way, and the isolation is a way of protecting people from getting infected, and also in parallel making a vaccine. But there's one slight criticism I have of some of the work that's going on. When you get an infection from COVID, it's through your nose or your mouth, and that's, to use a technical term, that's your mucosal immune system. So it would make sense to make a vaccine where you actually squirt something up your nose or swallow it, because that's the same route that the infection is going. So you want to protect that part of your immune system from it. And I think some of these vaccines being trialled are actually injecting them like you would another sort of vaccine, inject them into the arm, which isn't the route of how the virus gets into your body. So it makes more sense to design a vaccine that will be used orally or nasally. But other than that, I think they're going about it the right way. I think we need a vaccine as soon as possible. There have been questions cast on whether people who've had the virus and recovered, whether they have long-term immunity. I don't think that's really known yet. The principle of transferring antibodies from them is a good one, and that's being tried, although it's a very difficult thing. It's much easier to get a vaccine rather than transfer antibodies from somebody else. But that might be a bit simplistic, because an antibody may not be completely protective. Sometimes an antibody can just be a sign that you've had an infection, and the antibody may not actually protect you because the virus has got a way of hiding inside cells. So as well as antibody responses, you need a cellular response. You need your cells to attack the virus-infected cells as well. So that's another aspect of it.
Just this very quick conversation with you sort of just makes absolutely clear that it's more complicated than sometimes we imagine. There's a part in the Bible, and I think it's one of the Psalms, Psalm 139, talks about how we are fearfully and wonderfully.
Yes, I thought of that. Yes.
And just listening to you talk about it and the way our bodies respond and react just suggests that there's so much about our own bodies that almost we don't quite fully understand, or we're just getting to understand, or how, as a Christian, you were a Christian as a young child. You grew up in church. You made that commitment to Christ, and you'd gone into this world of science and the particular field that you were involved with. What is the relationship in your own mind between your faith in the Lordship of Jesus and immunology and the world that you've inhabited all your life?
Well, I first got absolutely fascinated by immunology as an undergraduate student, and I could see God's hand in it, how God has made this incredibly complex system to do a job for us. You know, it's a part of your body that it's not obvious, but it's an essential part of your body. And the way it works needs to be extremely complicated and versatile, because we get faced with thousands of different infections and diseases, and we need to have a way of protecting us. And God's made this way in the immune system, and you know, I was absolutely fascinated by the intricacies and the beauty of it, really. I was also encouraged by a Christian professor at Liverpool who he's a great witness, and he's a Christian. He's a pharmacologist, actually, so he looks at drug development. And so it is possible to be a Christian and a scientist.
Yeah.
And I think possibly a higher percentage of scientists are Christians in other professions. I don't know, but he's one of several Christian scientists who I've been really blessed by and encouraged by over the years.
Mm. It's interesting because, again, it is the sort of like the what's often said is, oh, science is against faith.
Yes.
But actually you're saying within the field there's loads of people who have lived easily with both, that actually people, you know, faithful followers of Jesus who don't.
Yes.
You mentioned about immunology being about beauty. Tell me about the beauty of immunology.
Well, it's a bit difficult to put into words, really. It's just, well, the complexity and the challenge of it is what I find interesting, and it's a very fast-moving field. Now, when I first started, the absolute basics were known, really. I started in the early 80s, and then someone worked out how an antibody was made. In about 1983, a chap got a Nobel Prize for working out the structure of an antibody. Now we make antibodies within a week. Somebody can genetically engineer an antibody and use it to treat cancer or sepsis or all sorts of things. You know, the incredibly fast rate of progress has been amazing, and there's beauty in that, really. That it's a very, very fast-moving field, and there's lots of different aspects of it to look at.
Very good. If you were able to say something to the whole church or to those who are watching, what would you want to encourage us with? What would you want to say? What would you want to remind us of?
Okay. Well, I think stay together. I think I've been really encouraged by the home group Zoom meetings and the Sunday meetings. And that's really sort of helped to strengthen our faith, meeting virtually. And I would say carry on and do that and encourage one another in that way. Also keep praying for the NHS people in the fellowship. There's several who will be in contact with patients, and I think we need to pray for them and support them. But the other thing is not necessarily to expect that in a month's time we're suddenly going to be back to normal. Maybe sort of prayer for patience, that when we do return to normal, it will be gradual and that it'll be safe to do so, really. And not expect to immediately go back to hugging each other in church and that. You know, we need to be a bit careful and take advice from the experts.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit further and longer than any of us might have imagined. Steve, it's been brilliant to talk to you. I think lots of people who might know you just a little bit would be kind of surprised by your background, by the things you've been involved with. And I see it as part of the gift that, in a sense, we have as a church, is we recognize that within us there are people who have been involved in so many different areas of life, so many different levels of engagement with what we face. And yet you're a gift to us, along with Kath, to us as your fellowship, and you wear it really lightly, and I really appreciate that. But we want to pray blessing on you, and on as you continue to be involved in the university, as you continue with your students. And thanks ever so much for the time that you gave us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.